The autumn sun was setting as Lily Chen drove home from another long day of teaching. Her small Honda Civic hummed along the coastal road, trunk filled with art supplies and storybooks for tomorrow's lesson. 5 years of teaching kindergarten had taught her to always be prepared, even if it meant her car perpetually smelled like crayons and glue sticks. The road curved alongside cliffs that dropped to the ocean, a route Lily took every day but never tired of. The familiar journey was interrupted when she spotted hazard lights blinking ahead. A sleek black Aston Martin sat pulled over on the narrow shoulder, hood up, looking strangely out of place on the humble coastal highway. Lily slowed down, hesitating for just a moment. Her mother had always warned her about stopping for strangers, but something about the stranded driver's defeated posture made her tap her brakes. This wasn't the big city after all. In the small town of Pine Harbor, people still helped each other. She pulled her Civic behind the luxury car, leaving her headlights on as the evening grew darker. Grabbing her phone and keeping her keys between her fingers, another habit her mother had drilled into her, Lily approached cautiously. "Car trouble?" she called out, staying a few steps back. The man turned, clearly surprised to see someone stopping. He was tall with salt and pepper hair, wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than 3 months of Lily's rent. Despite his polished appearance, there was a genuine weariness in his eyes. "Yes, unfortunately," he replied, gesturing helplessly at the engine. "It just died on me. I've called roadside assistance, but they're at least 2 hours away." Lily nodded, relaxing slightly at his non-threatening demeanor. "That's Pine Harbor for you. Not exactly on anyone's priority list for service." She stepped closer to peek at the engine, though she knew almost nothing about cars, let alone one this expensive. "I'm Lily, by the way." "Richard Blackwood," he offered with a small smile, extending his hand. His handshake was firm but not overpowering. "I appreciate you stopping. Most people just drove past Well, you picked a bad spot to break down. Cell service is spotty here, and there's not much between here and town except trees and ocean." Richard sighed, looking at his watch. "I was supposed to be at Seaside Resort for a meeting at 8 tomorrow morning. At this rate, I'll be lucky to get there by noon." Lily thought for a moment, chewing her bottom lip. The Seaside Resort was the fancy new development about 45 minutes up the coast. Local opinion was divided on it, jobs versus overdevelopment. But Lily had stayed out of those debates. "Listen, the nearest mechanic is Pete's Auto in town, about 15 minutes back the way I came. I can give you a ride there if you want. Pete won't be open now, but his son Bobby lives above the shop and handles after-hours emergencies." Relief washed over Richard's face. "That would be incredibly helpful, thank you." "Fair warning," Lily said as she led him to her Honda. "You'll have to move some art supplies. We're making papier-mâché planets tomorrow." Richard chuckled, the sound warming the cool evening air. "I'm not too proud to sit among papier-mâché. This suit has survived worse." As they approached her car, Lily quickly moved stacks of colored paper and containers of glitter to the back seat. She brushed cracker crumbs off the passenger seat with an embarrassed sweep of her hand. "Sorry for the mess. Snack time remnants." "Please don't apologize," Richard said, sliding into the seat with surprising ease for a man his size. "This is the most interesting thing that's happened all day." Lily turned her car around and headed back toward town. The silence felt awkward, so she did what she always did with nervous kindergartners on the first day of school. Asked questions. "So, business at the resort?" Richard nodded, loosening his tie slightly. "Investment meeting. Potential expansion of the property." "Ah," Lily replied, unsure what to say to that. The resort was already the biggest building for 50 miles. "You work in real estate?" "Among other things," he said vaguely. "I have interest in several industries." The way he downplayed it made Lily suspect he was more important than he was letting on. His watch alone looked like it could pay off her student loans. "And you?" Richard asked, genuinely curious. "Teacher, I'm guessing?" Lily laughed. "What gave it away? The glitter embedded in my sweater or the half-eaten animal crackers in the cup holder? Both, plus the patience to stop and help a stranger. Teachers tend to be the helpful sort." "Kindergarten," she confirmed. 5 years now at Pine Harbor Elementary. Noble profession," Richard said. And unlike when most people said it, with that tone that implied shame about the pay, he seemed to mean it. The lights of Pine Harbor came into view. The small downtown, just a few blocks of local businesses. Most were already closed for the evening, their darkened windows reflecting the streetlights. Lily pulled into the gravel lot beside Pete's auto shop, a small but well-kept garage with an apartment above it. "Let me text Bobby," Lily said, pulling out her phone. "He's probably playing video games and won't hear us knock." As they waited, Richard looked around the small town with interest. "Charming place. Very different from the city. That's why I stayed after college," Lily admitted. "I grew up here, went away for school, and realized there's something special about knowing your neighbors and having the grocery clerk ask about your grandmother's hip replacement." Bobby appeared at the top of the stairs on the side of the building, his dark hair sticking up in all directions. He was wiping his hands on a rag as he came down to meet them. "Miss Chen, Mom said you were making solar systems this week. The kids still using those orbit patterns I printed for you?" Lily smiled. "They are, and they're a huge hit. Bobby, this is Mr. Blackwood. His car broke down on Cliff Road. Aston Martin, right? Saw it yesterday when you drove through. Beautiful machine." Bobby's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of a true car lover. "What happened?" As Richard described the symptoms, Bobby nodded knowingly. "Could be several things. Won't know until I see it. I can take my truck out there now if you want." "That would be wonderful," Richard said, relief evident in his voice. "I can drive you back to your car," Lily offered. Bobby grabbed his keys from inside the shop. "I'll follow you guys out there, then tow it back. Might not be able to look at it proper until morning, though." "I understand," Richard said. "I appreciate whatever you can do." As they drove back toward the stranded Aston Martin, Richard turned to Lily. "You seem to know everyone." "Not everyone," she corrected with a smile. "But Bobby was my student 12 years ago. His dad fixed my first car, a handed-down Corolla that leaked oil like a sieve. It must be rewarding seeing your former students grow up." Lily nodded, warmth filling her chest. "It's the best part of teaching in your hometown. I've got doctors now who once cried because they couldn't zip their own jackets." When they reached the Aston Martin, Bobby let out a low whistle as he circled it with his flashlight. After some discussion about the car's symptoms and a quick look under the hood, he confirmed it would need to come back to the shop. "I can give you a ride to wherever you need to go," Bobby offered as he prepared to hook up the tow. Richard glanced at his watch again, frowning slightly. "I need to get to Seaside Resort, but I hate to impose further." "That's at least 40 minutes from here," Bobby said, scratching his head. "I've got to stay with the car and there's no taxi service in Pine Harbor." Lily found herself speaking before she had fully thought it through. "I can drive you to the resort." Both men looked at her with surprise. "I couldn't ask you to do that," Richard protested. "You didn't ask," I offered, Lily pointed out. "It's not that far, and I don't have anything else planned tonight except grading papers, which can wait." Richard studied her face, seeming to search for any sign of reluctance. "Are you certain?" "It's a significant detour for you," Lily shrugged. "Consider it small-town hospitality. Plus, I haven't seen the finished resort yet. I'm curious what all the fuss is about." After a moment's hesitation, Richard nodded. "Then I accept your kind offer and I insist on compensating you for your time and gas." "We'll discuss that later," Lily said, not wanting to seem too eager for money. Though her teacher's salary and the recent increase in her rent meant every little bit helped, they retrieved Richard's luggage, a single expensive leather overnight bag from the Aston Martin before Bobby towed it away, promising to call with an update in the morning. The mechanic gave Lily a questioning look as he left, which she answered with a reassuring smile. Bobby had known her long enough to trust her judgment. As they settled back into Lily's Honda for the longer drive, Richard seemed more relaxed. "Your community has an impressive support system. Everyone looking out for each other." "It's not perfect," Lily admitted as she programmed the resort's address into her phone's GPS. "Small towns have their problems too. Gossip travels faster than light and everyone knows your business. But when things go wrong, people show up. That matters." The road to the resort wound along the coastline, the ocean now a dark expanse with just the occasional glimmer of moonlight on water. Lily turned on the radio to a local station playing soft rock. "Is this all right?" she asked. "Perfect," Richard replied, gazing out at the night. "I rarely get to just sit. There's always somewhere to be, something to do." "Important man with important meetings," Lily teased gently. Richard chuckled. "Something like that." Though tonight's breakdown has put things in perspective, they fell into comfortable conversation as the miles passed. Richard asked about her students, And unlike many adults who inquired out of politeness, he seemed genuinely interested in her stories about classroom triumphs and challenges. Lily found herself telling him about Miguel, who had finally recognized all his letters after months of struggling, and the pure joy on his face when he read his first word. "That's the real reward," she explained, her voice soft with memory. "Not the paycheck or the summers off, but those moments when you see a light turn on in a child's mind. I imagine those moments sustain you through the difficult days," Richard observed. Lily nodded, unconsciously twisting the ring on her right hand, a habit she'd developed over the years. It was a simple band with a small cloudy stone that caught the dashboard lights as she turned it. Richard noticed the movement. "Interesting ring." Lily glanced down at it and smiled. "It was my grandmother's, not valuable but special to me. She raised me after my parents died, and she wore this ring every day of her adult life." "May I?" Richard asked, gesturing toward her hand. At a stoplight, Lily extended her hand, allowing him to examine the ring. His fingers were warm as they gently held hers, turning the ring to see the stone. "Your grandmother had excellent taste," he said, releasing her hand as the light turned green. "There's something uniquely beautiful about it. She always said it reminded her that real treasures aren't always the shiniest things in the room," Lily replied, returning her hand to the steering wheel. The GPS announced they were approaching their destination, and soon the seaside resort came into view. A sprawling complex of elegant buildings perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, windows gleaming with light despite the late hour. As they pulled up to the grand entrance, Lily felt suddenly conscious of her modest car and casual clothes next to the valets in crisp uniforms and guests in evening wear. Richard, however, seemed unfazed by the contrast. "Lily," he said as they came to a stop, "I can't thank you enough for your kindness tonight." "It was nothing," she insisted. "Anyone would have done the same." Richard shook his head. "No, not anyone. Most people wouldn't have stopped at all, let alone gone so far out of their way to help a stranger." Before Lily could respond, a valet opened Richard's door with a deferential "Good evening, Mr. Blackwood." The immediate recognition and respect in the young man's voice confirmed Lily's suspicions that her passenger was someone of significance. Richard stepped out, then leaned back in. "We're not finished," he said with a warm smile. "I still need to properly thank you. Can you wait just a moment while I check in?" Lily nodded, watching as he spoke briefly to the valet before disappearing into the lobby. She sat back in her seat, taking in the luxury around her and wondering what exactly Richard Blackwood did that commanded such automatic respect. Lily drummed her fingers on the steering wheel as she waited, watching the parade of expensive cars pulling up to the resort entrance. A young couple emerged from a gleaming Mercedes, laughing as the valet hurried to grab their designer luggage. Everything about the seaside resort screamed money and privilege, a different world from her classroom with its handmade decorations and second-hand books. After about 5 minutes, Richard returned with a hotel employee in a tailored suit following behind him. "Lily," Richard said, opening her car door. "This is Thomas, the hotel manager. He's arranged a proper thank you for your help tonight." Thomas smiled warmly. "Ms. Chen, Mr. Blackwood has explained your kindness. We'd like to offer you dinner in our restaurant and a room for the night so you don't have to drive back so late." Lily's eyes widened. "That's really not necessary, I insist," Richard said. "It's nearly 10 o'clock and that coastal road isn't well lit. Besides, I'd enjoy the company for dinner if you're willing." Lily hesitated, glancing down at her simple jeans and cardigan. "I'm not exactly dressed for a fancy restaurant." Thomas waved away her concern. "Our dining room welcomes all guests regardless of attire, and we can provide anything you might need for an overnight stay." The thought of driving all the way back to Pine Harbor in the dark was unappealing, and Lily had to admit she was hungry. Plus, her curiosity about Richard had only grown. Who was this wealthy businessman who treated her with such genuine respect? "All right," she finally agreed. "Thank you. That's very generous." A valet stepped forward to take her car keys, promising her Honda would be well taken care of. Lily grabbed her tote bag, suddenly conscious of the crayon marks on it as she stepped into the grand lobby. Polished marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers, and massive floral arrangements scented the air. "Your regular suite is ready, Mr. Blackwood," Thomas informed them as they crossed the lobby. Several staff members nodded respectfully as they passed. "And we've prepared the ocean view room next door for Ms. Chen." "Perfect," Richard said. We'll have dinner in about 30 minutes. I'll inform the chef, Thomas replied before turning to Lily. Ms. Chen, there's a boutique on the mezzanine level if you'd like to browse before dinner. Mr. Blackwood has arranged a courtesy account for anything you might need. Lily started to protest, but Richard held up a hand. Please, it's the least I can do. Get whatever makes you comfortable. I'll meet you at the restaurant at 10:30. Before she could argue further, a staff member appeared to guide her to her room. Lily followed, trying not to gawk at the opulence around her. The room turned out to be larger than her entire apartment, with a balcony overlooking the moonlit ocean and a bathroom bigger than her kitchen. Once alone, Lily sat on the edge of the plush king-sized bed, feeling out of place. She pulled out her phone to text her neighbor May about feeding her cat, then hesitated over what to say about her own whereabouts. Having dinner with a mysterious millionaire I just met sounded like the beginning of a crime documentary. She settled on car trouble helping someone. Staying at Seaside Resort tonight. Can you feed Mochi? I'll explain tomorrow. May's reply came quickly, a row of wide-eyed emojis followed by, you better tell me everything. After a quick shower in the luxurious bathroom, Lily debated what to wear. Her teaching clothes weren't terrible, but they'd been worn all day. With some reluctance, she headed to the boutique Thomas had mentioned. The shop was still open, with a cheerful attendant who didn't bat an eye when Lily mentioned Richard's name. Mr. Blackwood called ahead, the woman explained, helping Lily select a simple navy blue dress that wasn't too formal or revealing, along with a light cardigan and necessary toiletries. When Lily tried to see the price, the attendant gently steered her away. It's all taken care of, Ms. Chen. Mr. Blackwood is one of our most valued guests. At 10:30, Lily made her way to the restaurant, now dressed in the new clothes with her hair freshly brushed. She felt more presentable, if still out of her element. The maitre d' immediately recognized her. Ms. Chen, welcome. Mr. Blackwood is waiting for you. The restaurant was elegant but not stuffy, with tables spaced far enough apart for privacy. Richard stood as she approached, looking refreshed in a crisp blue shirt with his suit jacket draped over the chair. You look lovely, he said sincerely. I hope the boutique had what you needed. More than enough, Lily replied, settling into the chair a waiter pulled out for her. This is all very generous, Richard. I really only gave you a ride. He shook his head as he sat down. You showed kindness to a stranger when you had no obligation to do so. That's rare these days. A waiter appeared with menus and a bottle of wine already selected. Richard asked if the wine was acceptable, and Lily nodded, though she knew nothing about fine wines. Her usual choice was whatever was on sale at the local market. So, Lily said after they'd ordered, are you going to tell me what you really do? Because I'm guessing it's not just business interests. Richard smiled, taking a sip of his wine. Is it that obvious? The staff practically bow when you walk by. You have a regular suite, and you can set up courtesy accounts with a phone call. Either you're someone important or you're really good at faking it. His laugh was genuine, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes. I run Reed International. We're an investment firm with interests in technology, real estate, and sustainable energy. Lily's eyes widened slightly. Even she had heard of Reed International. Their logo appeared on buildings and in news stories about major business deals. So you're not just rich, you're super rich, she said bluntly, then blushed at her own forwardness. Richard didn't seem offended. Money is relative. I grew up without much of it, which probably shaped how I view wealth now. How so? Lily asked, genuinely curious. I try to remember it's a tool, not an identity, he said, his expression thoughtful, though I admit it's easy to get caught up in the trappings. He gestured at the restaurant around them. Their appetizers arrived, some kind of seafood creation that looked like art on a plate. Lily tentatively tried a bite and was surprised by the burst of flavor. This is amazing, she admitted. The chef here is incredible, Richard agreed, though sometimes I miss simpler food. There was a diner near where I grew up that made the best grilled cheese sandwiches I've ever had. You still eat grilled cheese? Lily teased. I figured it was all caviar and gold leaf whatever at your level. Richard grinned. I choose a good grilled cheese over caviar any day. Some wealthy people develop expensive tastes. I just have expensive means to satisfy simple ones. As dinner progressed, Lily found herself relaxing. Despite his status, Richard was easy to talk to, curious about her life and surprisingly down to earth. He asked about her students, her town, and her path to teaching. In turn, he shared stories about his own journey from a middle-class upbringing to business success. It wasn't all smooth sailing, he confessed over their main course. I've made plenty of mistakes, had several ventures fail completely. The successes just ended up outweighing the failures. That's what I tell my kids, Lily said. That mistakes are how we learn, though their mistakes usually involve glue sticks and hair, not million-dollar business deals. The principles are the same, Richard chuckled. Learn, adapt, try again. Though I've never had a glue stick in my hair. Thankfully. The day's still young, Lily joked, surprising herself with her comfort level. Their conversation flowed naturally through dessert, a chocolate creation that Lily declared was worth every calorie. They talked about books they'd loved, places they'd visited, and even politics, where they found both common ground and respectful disagreement. You're not what I expected, Richard admitted as they finished their coffee. What did you expect from a kindergarten teacher who picked up a stranded motorist? I'm not sure, he said thoughtfully, but you're refreshingly direct. Most people I meet either want something from me or are trying to impress me. Well, I already got a free dinner and hotel room, Lily pointed out with a smile, and I stopped trying to impress people after my disastrous attempt at karaoke 3 years ago. Richard laughed. Now that's a story I'd like to hear. Maybe someday, she replied, glancing at her watch. It's getting late and you have that important meeting tomorrow. Right, he nodded, though he seemed reluctant to end the evening. 8 a.m. with potential investors. I should prepare. As they left the restaurant, the hotel had grown quieter, most guests retired to their rooms. They walked together to the elevator, comfortable silence between them. My meeting should wrap up by noon, Richard said as they reached Lily's door. If you'd like, I could have someone drive you back to Pine Harbor afterward, or... He hesitated. If you're not in a rush, perhaps we could have lunch. I'd like to hear what Bobby says about my car. Lily considered this. She didn't have classes tomorrow, it was a teacher work day, and had only planned to catch up on grading. Lunch would be nice, she decided. I'm curious if your fancy car can be fixed by our small-town mechanic. Excellent. Richard smiled, seemingly pleased by her acceptance. Shall we say noon in the lobby? I'll be there, Lily confirmed. Good night, then, he said, stepping back. And thank you again, Lily. Not just for the ride, but for the conversation. It's been refreshing. Good night, Richard, she replied. Try not to break down any more luxury vehicles before morning. His laugh echoed in the hallway as she entered her room, closing the door with a smile. Lily moved to the balcony, looking out at the moonlit ocean. The evening had been surreal, from spotting a stranded car to dining with a millionaire businessman. Yet despite the obvious differences in their lives, she genuinely enjoyed Richard's company. She twisted her grandmother's ring absently, remembering how Richard had noticed it at dinner, asking about its history. Most people didn't pay attention to the simple piece of jewelry, but he'd seemed genuinely interested when she explained it had been passed down through generations of women in her family. Look at me, Grandma, she whispered to the night air, having dinner with one of the richest men in the country. Who would have thought? As she prepared for bed in the luxurious room, Lily wondered what tomorrow would bring. She wasn't naive enough to think this chance encounter meant anything beyond what it was. A wealthy man showing gratitude for a kind deed. Tomorrow, Richard would return to his world of board meetings and business deals, and she would go back to construction paper and alphabet songs. Still, there had been moments during dinner when the gap between their worlds hadn't seemed so vast. Moments of genuine connection that had nothing to do with money or status. Lily fell asleep wondering about those moments, her grandmother's ring resting on the nightstand beside her. Lily woke to sunlight streaming through curtains she'd forgotten to close. For a moment, she was disoriented by the unfamiliar room until memories of the previous night flooded back. The broken-down car, the drive to the resort, dinner with Richard Blackwood. It felt like something from a movie, not her real life. She stretched and checked her phone. It was just past 8 and she had a text from Bobby about Richard's car. Found the problem. Parts coming from city. Ready tomorrow afternoon earliest. Tell your fancy friend. Lily smiled at Bobby, referring to Richard as her fancy friend. She texted back a quick thanks, then added a message to May confirming she'd be home today. With hours before her noon meeting with Richard, Lily decided to explore the resort. After a quick shower, she put on her clothes from yesterday. She wasn't about to wear the new dress for daytime, and headed out. The seaside resort was even more impressive in daylight. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the dramatic coastline, with waves crashing against rocky cliffs below. Lily wandered through elegant public spaces, past a spa advertising seaweed wraps and hot stone massages, and finally found herself at an outdoor infinity pool that seemed to merge with the ocean horizon. She settled into a cushioned chair, content to people watch as hotel guests in designer swimwear lounged with fruity cocktails despite the morning hour. A server approached offering her coffee, which she gratefully accepted. "Miss Chen?" A voice interrupted her people watching about an hour later. She looked up to see Thomas, the hotel manager from last night. "Mr. Blackwood asked me to check if you needed anything," he explained. "He's still in his meeting but wanted to ensure you're comfortable." "That's thoughtful of him," Lily replied, touched by the gesture. "I'm fine, just enjoying the view. It's not every day I get to experience a place like this," Thomas smiled. "Mr. Blackwood also mentioned you're a teacher. We have a small library if you'd like to browse. Some of our guests donate books before they leave, and we've accumulated quite a collection." The idea appealed to Lily. Finding new books for her classroom was always a priority. "I'd love that, thank you." The library was a cozy room with built-in bookshelves and comfortable reading chairs. True to Thomas's word, it contained an eclectic mix of titles, from best-selling thrillers to coffee table books about architecture. Lily browsed happily, setting aside several children's books that would be perfect for her classroom. "Find anything good?" Lily turned to see Richard standing in the doorway, looking more casual than yesterday in a light sweater and dark slacks. His meeting must have ended early. "Several, actually," she replied, holding up a picture book about sea creatures. "My kids would love this. The illustrations are gorgeous, and take it," Richard said. "Take them all if they're useful. That's what the library is for." "All of them might be excessive," Lily laughed, gesturing to the stack she'd accumulated. "But a few would be wonderful. Thank you." Richard moved closer, picking up one of the books she'd selected. "The Little Blue Truck," he read, smiling at the colorful cover. "My nephew loves this one." "You have a nephew?" Lily asked, realizing how little she actually knew about his personal life. "Two nephews and a niece," Richard nodded. "My sister's children. They live in Boston, so I don't see them as often as I'd like." "Do you have children of your own?" Lily asked, then immediately worried it was too personal. Richard didn't seem bothered by the question. "No. My work kept me too busy for many years, and then—" He paused, a shadow crossing his face. "My wife and I divorced 5 years ago. We never had children." "I'm sorry," Lily said softly. He shrugged. "It was for the best. Kathy, my ex-wife, wanted different things. She loved the lifestyle my success provided but didn't understand why I still worked so hard once we had money." His smile turned wry. "She's happier now with a retired golf pro in Florida." Lily wasn't sure what to say, so she changed the subject. "I heard from Bobby this morning. Your car needs parts from the city. It won't be ready until tomorrow afternoon at the earliest." Richard nodded, seeming unsurprised. "Thomas told me. I'll need to reschedule tomorrow's meetings in the city." He hesitated, then added, "Would you join me for lunch now? The restaurant has a terrace with an amazing view." "I'd like that," Lily agreed, gathering her selected books. The terrace was as spectacular as promised, with glass barriers providing unobstructed views of the coastline while blocking the wind. They were seated at a corner table, the ocean stretching out before them. "So," Richard said after they'd ordered, "tell me more about Pine Harbor. You mentioned growing up there." Lily nodded, sipping her water. "Born and raised. My parents ran the local bookstore until they died in a car accident when I was 10. My grandmother raised me after that." "I'm sorry about your parents," Richard said, his eyes reflecting genuine sympathy. "That must have been difficult." "It was," Lily acknowledged. "But my grandmother was amazing. She taught literature at the community college and filled our house with books and ideas. She's the reason I became a teacher. She sounds remarkable. Is she still in Pine Harbor?" "No," Lily said softly, twisting her grandmother's ring. "She passed away during my final year of college. Left me her house and this ring." Richard's eyes were drawn to the ring. "May I look at it again?" "The craftsmanship is unusual." Lily slipped it off and handed it to him. The stone caught the sunlight, revealing flecks of blue within the cloudy gray. Richard examined it carefully, turning it over in his fingers. "This setting is distinctive," he murmured. "I've seen something similar before." "Really, where?" Lily asked, surprised. Richard seemed lost in thought, still studying the ring. My grandfather was a jeweler, he said finally. He created custom pieces before and after the war. This reminds me of his work. He handed the ring back. It's probably just a coincidence. Their food arrived, a seafood salad for Lily and grilled fish for Richard. As they ate, the conversation shifted to Richard's business interests, particularly his passion for sustainable energy. That's what today's meeting was about, he explained. We're investing in offshore wind farms. The technology has improved dramatically in recent years. Is that why you're interested in expanding the resort? Lily asked. Richard looked surprised. You remembered that from yesterday? Yes, partly. We see tourism and clean energy as complementary for coastal communities like Pine Harbor. Jobs in both sectors could help stabilize the economy year-round. That would make a difference, Lily agreed. Many families struggle when tourist season ends. One of my students' parents works 3 jobs in winter just to make ends meet. Richard nodded thoughtfully. That's the kind of perspective I value. Investors see spreadsheets and profit margins. They don't see the family working 3 jobs. As lunch progressed, Richard asked more questions about Pine Harbor, showing particular interest in its history and economy. Lily found herself sharing details about local businesses, the aging fishing fleet, and even the contentious town council meetings about development versus preservation. You should run for town council, Richard suggested. You know the community, care about its future, and understand both sides of the development debate. Lily laughed. Me? I can barely manage 20 kindergartners. Besides, local politics can get nasty. You underestimate yourself, Richard said seriously. Those 20 kindergartners are lucky to have you. After lunch, they walked along a path that wound around the resort property. The conversation flowed easily as they discussed books they'd both read, places they'd like to visit, and even their favorite comfort foods. Grilled cheese for him, tomato soup with goldfish crackers for her. Very kindergarten teacher of you, Richard teased. The goldfish are essential, Lily insisted. They add the perfect crunch. As they rounded a bend, the path opened to a small secluded cove below. Several resort guests were gathering shells along the shoreline. Want to go down? Richard asked. There's a staircase just ahead. Lily nodded and they made their way down wooden steps built into the cliff face. The beach was small but pristine, with smooth pebbles instead of sand. Lily immediately slipped off her shoes to feel them under her feet. Cold, she gasped, but didn't retreat. Richard smiled, remaining on dry land with his shoes on. I've never understood the appeal of cold water on bare feet. That's because you're always wearing fancy leather shoes, Lily teased. When was the last time you went barefoot outdoors? Richard considered this. Probably at my lake house last summer, though even then I likely had boat shoes on. Lily laughed, bending to pick up a flat stone. Can you skip rocks, Mr. Fancy Shoes? I'll have you know I was the rock-skipping champion at summer camp, Richard replied with mock indignation. He selected his own stone and demonstrated a perfect throw that sent it bouncing 5 times across the water's surface. Impressive, Lily admitted, attempting her own throw. Her stone skipped twice before sinking. Not bad, Richard said, but your wrist motion needs work. Like this. He demonstrated the proper technique. They spent the next half hour skipping stones and collecting interesting pebbles. Richard rolled up his pant legs and eventually removed his shoes, admitting the cold water was bracing but not terrible. Lily found herself laughing more than she had in months, especially when a wave surprised Richard soaking his rolled-up pants. The mighty businessman, defeated by the ocean, she teased as he tried unsuccessfully to wring out the fabric. The ocean is mightier than any CEO, he conceded good-naturedly. I should change before dinner. Dinner? Lily asked, suddenly remembering the real world. I should be getting back to Pine Harbor. I have school tomorrow. Richard's expression fell slightly. Of course. I didn't mean to keep you so long. It's fine, Lily assured him. I've enjoyed today. It's not often a kindergarten teacher gets to play hooky at a luxury resort. As they climbed back up to the main property, Richard seemed lost in thought. When they reached the top, he turned to her. Lily, I've been thinking, since my car won't be ready until tomorrow afternoon and you have school, would you allow me to send a car to bring you back here afterward? For dinner, perhaps. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. His expression was earnest, almost hopeful. Lily found herself wondering what he wanted to discuss. and whether it had anything to do with her ring, which he'd studied so intently at lunch. "I'd like that," she heard herself say. "I'm done teaching at 3. "Perfect," Richard smiled, relief visible in his eyes. "I'll have a car waiting at the school. And Lily," he hesitated, "bring your grandmother's ring. There's something about it that's familiar to me, and I'd like to look into it further if you don't mind." Curiosity piqued, Lily nodded. "Of course. It's not very valuable, but if you think it's special somehow, everything has a story," Richard said softly. "Sometimes we just need to find the right person to help us read it." As they walked back toward the main building to arrange Lily's transportation home, she wondered what story her grandmother's ring might be about to tell, and why a millionaire businessman seemed so interested in hearing it. The kindergarten classroom buzzed with energy as 20 small children worked on their papier-mâché planets. Lily moved between tables, helping tiny hands apply strips of newspaper to balloon surfaces. Despite having slept in a luxury resort the night before, she felt completely at home amid the cheerful chaos of her classroom. "Miss Chen, is my Jupiter big enough?" asked a small boy with glasses too large for his face. Lily smiled, examining his work. "It's perfect, Andy. Jupiter is the biggest planet, and yours is definitely the biggest in our solar system." The little boy beamed with pride, carefully adding another strip of paper to his creation. Throughout the day, Lily found her thoughts drifting to Richard and his mysterious interest in her grandmother's ring. Several times she caught herself absently twisting it on her finger as she helped her students or prepared materials. Her teaching assistant, Vivian, noticed during lunch break. "You okay, Lily? You seem distracted today." "Just tired," Lily replied, not quite ready to share her strange weekend adventure. "I had an unexpected overnight trip," Vivian raised an eyebrow. "Anything to do with the fancy black car that's been sitting in our parking lot for the last 20 minutes? "What?" Lily went to the window, and sure enough, a sleek black town car was parked near the school entrance, its driver standing patiently beside it. "Oh, that's for me, actually. After school. For you?" Vivian's curiosity was clearly piqued.
"Care to explain why a chauffeur is waiting for our resident kindergarten teacher?"
Lily sighed, knowing she couldn't avoid the story now. "Remember that broken-down car I stopped to help on Friday? The driver was Richard Blackwood." "The Richard Blackwood of Reed International?" Vivian's eyes widened. "The guy whose face was on the cover of Business Monthly last year?" "You read Business Monthly?" Lily asked, surprised. "My husband does. But that's not important. You spent the night with a billionaire?" "At his hotel." "Not with him," Lily clarified quickly, feeling her cheeks warm. "He invited me to dinner to thank me for helping him, and it was too late to drive back." Vivian leaned forward, clearly delighted by this turn of events. "And now he sent a car for you?" "Lily Chen, are you living in a romance novel?" "It's not like that," Lily insisted. "He's interested in my grandmother's ring for some reason. Thinks it might be connected to his grandfather, who was a jeweler." Vivian nodded, clearly unconvinced. "And the fancy car and what I assume was a fancy dinner had nothing to do with his interest." "You're impossible," Lily laughed, shaking her head. "It's just a professional courtesy." The afternoon seemed to crawl by, with Lily growing increasingly nervous as 3 o'clock approached. When the final bell rang and the last child had been collected by their parents, she quickly tidied her classroom and grabbed her bag. "Have fun with your billionaire," Vivian called after her. "Text me if you elope to his private island." Lily rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling as she headed for the parking lot. The driver spotted her immediately and stepped forward to open the rear door. "Good afternoon. Ms. Chen, Mr. Blackwood is looking forward to your arrival." The drive to the seaside resort passed quickly, with Lily admiring the coastal scenery from the comfort of the luxury vehicle. She had changed from her teaching clothes into a simple sundress she kept at school for art days. Not fancy, but cleaner than her paint-splattered work outfit. When they arrived, Thomas was waiting at the entrance to greet her personally. "Miss Chen, welcome back. Mr. Blackwood is waiting for you in the library." Lily followed him through the elegant lobby, now familiar with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers. In the library, Richard stood near a window, examining something in his hand. He looked up as she entered, his face brightening. "Lily, thank you for coming." He stepped forward, clearly pleased to see her. Today he wore a casual button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than she'd seen him before. "Your car made it hard to say no," she replied with a smile. My teaching assistant thinks I'm living in a romance novel. Richard laughed. I hope the car didn't cause too much gossip. Nothing a small-town teacher can't handle, Lily assured him. Though I expect I'll be answering questions for weeks. Tell them you were consulting on an educational initiative, Richard suggested. It's not entirely untrue. I do want to discuss something along those lines with you. Before Lily could ask what he meant, Richard gestured to a small table where a folder lay open. But first your ring. You brought it? Lily nodded, slipping the ring from her finger and handing it to him. As requested, though I still don't understand why you're so interested in my grandmother's old jewelry. Richard turned the ring over carefully. After you left yesterday, I made some calls. I have a friend who's an expert in vintage jewelry. I sent him photos of your ring and... He paused, meeting her eyes. He confirmed what I suspected. This was made by my grandfather, Arthur Reed. Lily stared at him. That's quite a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence at all, Richard said, his voice growing excited. He reached for the folder on the table. I had my assistant send some family photographs from storage. Look at this. He handed her a faded photograph of a young couple. The man wore a military uniform, his arm around a pretty young woman in a 1940s dress. They were laughing at the camera, radiantly happy. That's my grandfather Arthur before he shipped out for the war, Richard explained. And the woman beside him, Lily gasped softly. Though much younger than in any photos she had seen, the woman's features were unmistakably familiar. That's my grandmother, Grace Chen. She looked up at Richard in disbelief. How is this possible? Richard pulled out another photo. This one of the same couple, the young man down on one knee presenting a small box to the woman. According to family stories, Arthur created a special ring for his girlfriend before leaving for the war. He proposed just days before shipping out. The ring had a unique stone, labradorite with blue inclusions, set in a distinctive pattern he designed himself. Lily's mind whirled with the implications. But my grandmother married my grandfather, William Chen. I have their wedding photos. Richard nodded, pulling out more documents. I believe Arthur and Grace were separated by the war. Letters I found mention Arthur being reported missing in action in 1944. Grace would have believed he died. And she eventually married someone else, Lily murmured, trying to process this revelation. But she kept the ring. Exactly, Richard said softly. She kept it her whole life and then passed it to you. Lily sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Did they ever see each other again? After the war? Richard shook his head. From what I can piece together, Arthur was a prisoner of war for nearly a year. When he returned, he discovered Grace had married and moved away. He didn't pursue her. He respected her new life. Eventually, he married my grandmother Elizabeth in 1947. But he kept these photos, Lily observed, and made a matching ring, Richard added, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a man's ring with the same distinctive setting and stone. Arthur wore this his entire life. My father inherited it, and then it came to me when he passed away. I never knew its significance until now. Lily stared at the matching ring. So our grandparents were in love during the war, and now, by complete chance, we've met because your car broke down and I stopped to help. It seems impossible, Richard agreed. Yet here we are. A comfortable silence fell between them as they both absorbed the weight of this discovery. Finally, Lily looked up. You said you wanted to discuss an educational initiative. Richard seemed glad for the shift in topic. Yes, actually. Your passion for teaching in your community got me thinking. Reed International has a foundation that supports educational programs in communities where we do business. And you're planning business in Pine Harbor? With the resort expansion? Lily guessed. Potentially, Richard nodded. But regardless, I'd like to establish a grant program for Pine Harbor Elementary. New books, supplies, technology. Whatever would benefit your students most. Lily's eyes widened. That's incredibly generous, but no strings attached, Richard assured her. Consider it a thank you to the community that raised someone kind enough to help a stranger with a broken-down car. Lily studied his face, finding only sincerity. The school could certainly use the support. Our budget was cut again this year. Then it's settled, Richard smiled. Now, would you join me for dinner? The chef has prepared something special, and I have a feeling we have a lot more to talk about. Dinner was served on a private terrace overlooking the ocean. As the sun set, Casting golden light across the water, Richard and Lily continued exchanging stories, now with the added dimension of their connected past. "Do you think they would have been happy?" Lily asked, watching the waves below. "If the war hadn't separated them?" Richard considered this. "I'd like to think so. But then, neither of us would be here, at least not as we are now." "That's true," Lily acknowledged. "And they both found happiness eventually. My grandmother loved my grandfather dearly. I never doubted that growing up." "As did Arthur with Elizabeth," Richard said. "Though this explains why he was always so wistful when he looked at certain stars. He told me once they reminded him of the one that got away." As the evening progressed, their conversation shifted to the present and future. Richard shared his vision for sustainable development that could help communities like Pine Harbor thrive, while Lily offered insights about what her town truly needed, not just jobs, but a sense of purpose and continuity. "You should be at these planning meetings," Richard told her. "Your perspective would be invaluable." "A kindergarten teacher at corporate planning sessions?" Lily laughed. "I can picture the executives' faces now." "You'd be surprised," Richard replied. "Some of the best business insights come from people who understand human needs on a fundamental level." What's more fundamental than teaching children? As the evening wound down, Richard walked Lily to the waiting car that would take her home. The night had grown cool and he draped his jacket over her shoulders. "I'm glad my car broke down," he said as they reached the entrance, as inconvenient as it was at the time. "I'm glad I stopped," Lily replied, smiling up at him. "Though I'm still processing the fact that our grandparents were almost married." "Life has strange ways of bringing people together," Richard observed. "I believe there are no real coincidences." As the driver held the car door open, Richard hesitated. "Would you consider having dinner with me again? Perhaps in Pine Harbor this time? I should see more of the town if we're going to be working together on these community initiatives." The question hung in the air between them, more significant than a simple dinner invitation. Lily thought about the unlikely chain of events that had brought them to this moment. A broken-down car, a simple act of kindness, and a connection spanning generations. "I'd like that," she answered honestly. "There's a little seafood place on the harbor that makes amazing clam chowder. Nothing fancy, but it's the best in town." "Sounds perfect," Richard said, his smile warm in the evening light. "I'll call you tomorrow after I pick up my car from Bobby's." As the car pulled away from the resort, Lily looked down at her grandmother's ring, now back on her finger but carrying a weight of history she'd never imagined. She wondered what Grace would think about her grandy. Odd her connecting with Arthur's grandson after all these years. Perhaps some stories weren't meant to end when they seemed to. Perhaps they just paused, waiting for the next generation to pick up the narrative thread and continue weaving the tale in ways their grandparents could never have imagined. 6 months had passed since that fateful evening when Lily stopped to help a stranded motorist on the coastal road. The autumn chill had given way to winter, then spring, and now the first warm days of summer brightened Pine Harbor. Much had changed in that time, yet some things remained beautifully constant. Lily stood at the edge of the newly renovated playground at Pine Harbor Elementary, watching her students race across the colorful equipment with squeals of delight. The old rusted structures had been replaced with state-of-the-art play areas, designed for both fun and learning, complete with miniature wind turbines that powered twinkling lights and a small weather station where children could track temperature and rainfall. Miss Chen, look how high I can go," called a little girl from the swing set, her legs pumping enthusiastically. "Wonderful job, Zoe," Lily called back, smiling as she checked her watch. Almost 3 o'clock, the school day was nearly over, and she still had preparations to make for tomorrow's field trip to the new Marine Education Center at the harbor. The Marine Center was just one of several new developments in Pine Harbor, all carefully designed to blend with the town's character, while providing economic opportunities for locals. Reed International had kept its promise to invest in sustainable development, creating jobs that would last beyond tourist season. "The kids certainly love the new playground," said Principal Wong, joining Lily by the fence. "The school board is still in shock that we received such a generous grant." Lily smiled. "The Reed Foundation has been remarkably supportive." "Remarkably interested in our little town, you mean?" Principal Wong replied with a knowing glance. "Though I suspect that has something to do with a certain kindergarten teacher." Before Lily could respond, the bell rang, signaling the end of the school day. She gathered her students, helping them collect backpacks and lunch boxes before leading them to the pickup area where parents waited. As the last child departed with a hug around Lily's waist, she spotted a familiar black Aston Martin pulling into the school parking lot. Her heart did a little jump just as it had every time over the past 6 months. Richard stepped out of the car, no longer the stranded businessman in an expensive suit, but a familiar figure in casual clothes who waved to several parents and teachers by name. He had become a common sight in Pine Harbor, dividing his time between the city and the small coastal town where he now had both business and personal interests. "Ready for our meeting?" he asked as he approached, his smile warm and private. "Just need to grab my notes," Lily replied, leading him back to her classroom. The meeting was their playful term for their regular Friday dinners, which had started as professional discussions about the Reed Foundation's educational initiatives and gradually evolved into something much more personal. In her classroom, Richard wandered among the tiny desks while Lily gathered her things. He stopped at the back wall where a display showcased "Our Community Helpers," drawings by the students of people who made Pine Harbor special. Among pictures of firefighters and doctors was a crayon rendering of a man beside a broken car, with Mr. Richard written in wobbly letters beneath it. "I see Andy still remembers the story," Richard observed, touching the drawing gently. "They all do," Lily laughed, joining him. "You're part of Pine Harbor lore now, the rich city man whose car broke down and who fell in love with our town." "Just the town?" Richard asked, his eyes twinkling as they met hers. Lily felt her cheeks warm. Their relationship had developed slowly, deliberately, both of them careful not to rush something that felt increasingly precious. What had begun as an unlikely encounter had blossomed into a deep connection neither had expected. "We should get going if we want to make our reservation," she said, deflecting the question with a smile. The restaurant was a new addition to Pine Harbor, an airy space overlooking the harbor with large windows and a menu featuring local seafood. As they were led to their usual corner table, several townspeople greeted them. Richard was no longer viewed as an outsider, but as someone who had genuinely invested in the community's well-being. Once seated, Richard ordered wine while Lily updated him on the plans for tomorrow's field trip. "The marine biologist they hired is amazing with kids," she explained enthusiastically. "She has this touch tank where they can hold starfish and sea urchins. My class is so excited." "I spoke with the center director yesterday," Richard said. "They're already planning to expand the educational programs based on school interest." "That's wonderful," Lily replied, then hesitated before adding, "Though I have to ask, is this what you expected when your car broke down that night? To become so involved with a small-town school and its community projects?" Richard considered this, swirling the wine in his glass. "No," he admitted. "I expected to get my car fixed, attend my meetings, and return to my regular life. I never imagined—" He gestured around them at the town, at their table, at her. "Any of this? Do you regret it?" Lily asked softly. "The time away from the city, from your regular business?" "Not for a moment," Richard replied without hesitation. "Pine Harbor has given me perspective I didn't know I needed. And you—" He reached across the table for her hand. "You've reminded me what matters beyond balance sheets and board meetings." Lily squeezed his hand, still sometimes amazed by the turn her life had taken. Her grandmother's ring caught the light, the labradorite stone flashing blue just as Richard's matching ring did on his right hand. They had both taken to wearing these family heirlooms daily, a connection to their shared past. "I have something to show you," Richard said as their dinner arrived. He pulled a folder from his bag and handed it to her. Inside was a series of architectural renderings for a building labeled the Grace and Arthur Reed Community Center for Education and Arts. Lily looked up, eyes wide. "Richard." "It's just a proposal," he said quickly. "The town council would need to approve it, of course, but the foundation is prepared to fund it fully. Named after our grandparents," Lily said softly, touching the proposed sign in the drawing. Richard nodded. "I thought they might like that. Their names together after all these years. The center would have classroom space for adult education, studios for local artists, and a small museum about Pine Harbor's history." "It's perfect," Lily whispered, emotion thick in her voice. "Absolutely perfect." After dinner, they walked along the harbor as the sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Fishing boats bobbed alongside the new research vessel from the Marine Center, a visual representation of how Pine Harbor was evolving while honoring its roots. They stopped at a small park overlooking the water, sitting on a bench dedicated to one of the town's founding families. In the distance, lights twinkled on at the seaside resort, now connected to Pine Harbor by regular shuttle service that brought guests to town for dining and shopping. Boosting local businesses. I had a call from Thomas yesterday, Richard said, naming the hotel manager who had become a friend. The resort's educational programs about marine conservation are fully booked through summer. I'm not surprised, Lily replied. The partnership with our school has been wonderful for both sides. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the water. Finally, Richard turned to her. Lily, there's something I've been wanting to ask you. His serious tone made her heart beat faster. Yes? These past months have been the happiest of my life, he began, taking her hand. Discovering our grandparents' connection felt like fate. But what we've built since then is entirely our own. Lily nodded, feeling suddenly breathless. I've realized something important, Richard continued. All my success, all the wealth and achievements, they meant little without someone to share them with. Someone who sees me for who I am, not what I own. He shifted, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. Unlike his grandfather before the war, he didn't get down on one knee. Instead, he simply opened the box to reveal a ring with a stone that perfectly complemented her grandmother's, set in a design that echoed both family heirlooms. This isn't Grace's ring or Arthur's, he explained softly. It's ours, a new chapter in a story that began generations ago. Lily Chen, would you consider marrying me? Lily looked from the ring to Richard's hopeful face, tears welling in her eyes. The journey from that first roadside meeting to this moment seemed both impossibly long and surprisingly short. Yes, she whispered, then laughed through her tears. Yes, I would love to marry you. Richard slipped the ring onto her finger where it nestled perfectly alongside her grandmother's. I promise to never take your kindness for granted, he said. After all, you might have just driven past that broken-down car. Never, Lily replied, leaning forward to kiss him. I could never have just driven past. Later that evening, they stood on the porch of Lily's small house, once her grandmother's, looking up at the stars. The same stars, Lily thought, that her grandmother and Richard's grandfather might have gazed at during the war, making wishes that their separation would be temporary. Do you think they somehow engineered this? Lily asked, gesturing between them. Your car breaking down exactly where I would find you? The coincidence seems almost too perfect. Richard smiled, his arm warm around her shoulders. I believe some stories aren't meant to end until they find the right conclusion. Perhaps they were just waiting for us to finish what they started. As if in agreement, a shooting star streaked across the sky, bright and fleeting yet somehow eternal, much like the love that had begun generations ago and found its way, against all odds, into the present. 2 rings, 2 families, 2 lives now intertwined because a modest woman had stopped to help a stranded millionaire. The universe, it seemed, had a remarkable sense of timing, and perhaps a touch of poetry in its soul. They would be proud, Lily whispered, thinking of Grace and Arthur and the love that had endured, in its way for over 80 years. Yes, Richard agreed, kissing her temple gently. I believe they would. And somewhere, perhaps among those very stars, 2 souls who had once been separated by war and circumstance smiled down on the love that had finally, beautifully, come full circle.